Hey everyone, it's Ed Kime from over at SharpLogic. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through LightNap, our .NET Angular PrimeNG starter repo that will help you build great single-page applications. So I want to start off by just doing a quick overview of the name itself. So we went with the name LightNap because we start with lightweight. We wanted to minimize the amount of stuff you had to take dependencies on, as well as the amount of work you had to do to ramp up a new project to get something that's ready to be deployed. We also have a strong focus on .NET for the backend. In our experience, this is the ideal platform for building backends, especially for single-page applications, and Angular pairs perfectly with it for front end. Not only can you get something to market very quickly, but you can scale it almost infinitely for the most complex application scenarios based on a lot of the work that we've done over the years. Finally, PrimeNG is a personal preference, and that's something that I personally love as the front end for Angular applications to give a great user experience for things like more complex controls, really neat styling, and just a consistent developer experience. And our goal here for this repo is to be the ultimate starter repo for all full stack SPA solutions. So we're not just trying to be the best .NET Angular solution. We really want to be the best solution across the board. And we think that this combination of technologies with this repo starting point gives an advantage to developers who are considering their next project to be able to get out of the gate really quickly and be really productive all the way through. So now let's talk about what you get out of the box. So the first goal we have is for the repo to be launch ready day one. So you clone it, you build it, you run it, and you have something that works. You don't have to provide any plumbing. You get things like config level support for databases. We provide SQL Server and SQLite out of the box, as well as an in-memory provider, which makes it development really easy and clean. We give you identity with roles and support for JWT token management. So you don't have to build that plumbing. As far as you're concerned with the application, unless you have a very specific scenario, 90+% of the cases where you're going to be using these things, it's going to give you what you need out of the box. And you can add roles just like you could with any .NET application. And it's really easy to consume those roles in the front end, in the apps, however you extend the Angular front end. You also get UI views for things like administrator support. So you can go in after running the application at the beginning, users can register and they can log in, they can reset passwords and so forth. But then as an administrator, you can manage those users, you can search them, you can remove users, you can lock accounts. That's just what you get out of the box when you F5. And then finally, we also have some ready to go services, things like infrastructure for email on the back end, so that when a user signs up, you can configure your email settings and it'll send out a welcome registration mail, or it'll send out your password reset mails and things like that. The second part of what we want to provide are great reference patterns, because a lot of developers that come from the .NET backend trying to build front-end stuff, or they're primarily front-end developers looking to build some more back-end stuff, it can be tricky to see how data gets from the database all the way to those end-user controls and back. And so we provide reference patterns in the way we build the application and some of the videos we plan on doing to show how that stuff can flow all the way through the system back and forth in a consistent way, so that any developer working on your project will be able to extend that work, debug it, add new features, and so on. And so that functionality that we provide is isolated into what we're using as areas here. So different areas for things like profile, public access, secured access, administrative access, and for other identity stuff, so that you know where things fit and it's very easy to know where new features go. And then as you build new components for your application, new business parts, new other things, you add your own areas and you have a pattern you can follow to very consistently get things from the database to the UI and back. There's a lot of stuff we're doing that's designed on developer productivity that comes in both in our reference patterns, but also in just providing a superior developer experience. So we want you to be able to get these apps to market as quickly as possible. We have a scaffolder that is currently pre-released, but we're going to push it out pretty soon. You can get access to the source code and even run it following the documentation on our site. It generates complete infrastructure and UI from a single backend .NET entity class. So you create your entity class that defines your fields, and then you run the scaffolder and it gives you all the plumbing. It gives you the backend services to the controller, all the way to the front end DTOs and the services that use it, as well as your basic CRUD UI. So you can search content, you can look at an item, you can edit it, you can delete it. And then we also have a bunch of utilities, primarily on the front end, for things that make it really easy for common app scenarios. And everything we do is licensed under MIT license, so it's very permissive in usage. You can go out there and do what you need to do. So let's take a look at exactly what the experience is like for developers. So I'm going to go out and we're going to switch over to the repo. And I definitely recommend checking out our repo, which is at github.com/sharplogic/lightnap. And the you can view the source code as expected. We have a lot of information, and we are focusing quite a bit on this lightnap.sharplogic.com site, which is our documentation site. And over here, you'll find a bunch of stuff for getting started. You'll find a bunch of the common scenarios, and we are adding these out, as well as some detail into some of the GitHub Actions workflows we have for things like build, test, publish, deploying to Azure App Services. And then if you wanted to use the infrastructure that we have here for our documentation, for your own site's documentation, we do have all that in place where you can get the docs as part of the clone, replace it with your docs, and then, you know, using just the docs format, be able to take this and have it automatically build and deploy. And those things are all set based on flags you put in your repo. So it'll build and run certain things depending on how you configure it. But I want to start off here with getting started and talk about building and running the application. So we are .NET 9, Node.js, pretty much any modern Node.js is fine. And the Angular CLI are the things you're going to need to install. We'll assume you already have it. I'll assume you can go ahead and clone it and you get into the directory. So let's talk about the two things you have to run here, because you have to run a back end and you have to run a front end. So we'll go ahead and we'll start with the back end here. So right now I'm in my clone directory, and if we can take a look, like this matches up what you'd expect to see. So I want to go into my source, and then you can restore if you want to. You can run tests stuff, but I'm just going to jump ahead and do .NET run, we'll say project, and then specifically the reason for this is there are multiple projects in here, so we want to run the API, and this will go ahead, it'll restore if needed. It shouldn't be, I did do a quick restore. So what that does is it's running the project, and just to give you an idea what it's doing, it's setting up a bunch of entity framework work here. These are all the queries and things that are setting up the database. In this case, I think by default we're set to use SQLite. And yeah, so that comes in the box. You don't have to install anything there, you just get it. It's setting this up, which is primarily identity stuff. So that goes in and creates roles and so on. And then we have some code that runs in our seeder to do things like creating roles. So it creates an administrator role out of the box, as well as an admin account. This is all configurable though, and you can learn more about that in the documentation, but you don't have to create an account. You can define exactly how it does. But again, this is a good example of like all the work you have to do as a developer, where you need some way to seed an account so that when you deploy, you have something to log in as in order to be able to run the system. And that's just overhead you shouldn't have to deal with. So that's baked into the platform. You can add as many or as few as you want. And you can see it's listening by default on localhost 7266. So that's the server that has to run on its own, and that's running in .NET. And then on the front end setup, right, that's part of this project. It's in the LightNap Angular directory. You run an npm install and then a serve. So I'm going to go bring that up now. So what we'll do is we are in the LightNap directory. So we'll change to source, and then we'll change to LightNap in Angular. Good. And so here we would do an npm install. And this shouldn't do anything. I did a quick install off this before, so that should be pretty fast. Cool. That can take a little bit of time, so just be aware there's a ton of stuff it pulls down. Pretty much everything we use is from it's either Angular or PrimeNG. So there isn't a ton of extra things. And we built this all as like kind of I wouldn't say a monolithic application, but it's all a single app. There's no library segmentation at this time. And then I had advised to do an npm run start. This is really just an ng serve, but in the event that later on we added more stuff as part of that command, basically that script, it's good to just get in the practice of running that. And that watches the file system, and you can see this opens up, or this has us at 4200. So I'm going to go up and I'm going to bring up a browser. Actually, might as well click this guy, and hopefully that'll bring that up pretty quick. So we've got this site here. This is running locally. This is the default page experience. So you can see like we've got a title bar here, login, register buttons, and we've got some basic content. The layout's not really the focus that we had put into place. It's just that this lives in a public content section of the Angular web app. So you can edit this to show whatever anybody, it's a public landing page accessible to anyone who's coming to the site. Right now we can go ahead and I'm gonna register an account here, which I don't think we have anything set up. So test at sharplogic.com. I'm going to give it a password, some random one. And hopefully I got that correct there. And we've got these cool PrimeNG things so you can see, and you get all this out of the box, as well as like that measurement tester. It's just really cool stuff. We have this, you can set up your terms and conditions in the client. We've got just placeholder files for those, and agree to the terms, register the account, not save it now. Now I'm in the secure section of the web app. As you can see, this is going to be in its own area folder inside the Angular project. We will have another video that goes into depth on that stuff. This is now secured. We've got some menu stuff here, and I can see you've got a profile. There's no fields beyond the default username and email stuff, but if you wanted to add first name, last name, things like that, we have a tutorial that show you how to add those fields all the way from the database out through the front end and go back. We also have this concept of devices. So these map to the refresh tokens that are part of the JWT exchange process. So if someone's logged in on one site, or if they're logged in from one place and they want to go reset, or they want to log out of other ones, you can come in here and delete those. If you use these as app IDs for, let's say, iOS or Android apps, you can do that here and then give them the ability to log out of those devices. Every time the site loads, it requests a refresh or an access token. So it's either when the access token expires or the next time they go load the page, it'll check to see, and if they're not logged in, they'll be logged out at that point. And then finally, password change. So this is just some stuff here. Again, like the layout and stuff, you have full control over. And then what we can also do is, if I go back to this page, I'm going to log out, and then I will go ahead and I'm going to log in as the administrator account. And just to kind of give you an idea of what that experience is like, I'm going to switch back over to the docs, and if you see, if we scroll down here, it'll actually show you that we have the information about what that default is. And this is a default, again, like if we go into the code base, we'd be able to see that, actually let me switch out to the code base here just to show you. The other videos will go more in depth on code, but this is how you would define it with the administrator users. There's just an array inside your config file that's an array of items that have an email, username, and password. You can change this and it'll just create those other accounts if they don't exist, but just to give an idea for that. And now that I've got that information, I'm going to switch back over. So I'm going to go back in and log into this. I'm going to use that password. And when I sign in, you'll notice that this is pretty much the same view, only now we also have an admin section where I can see the users that are created in the account. I can do some cool stuff where I can like do some filtering down for searching. I can look at the roles. There's only the administrator role. We have a good tutorial explaining how to go in and add more roles and how to use them. And then we can see this. I can add users to them. There's little things built in, like if you want to use the confirmation pop-ups, you want to try to delete a user, it checks to make sure you can't remove yourself from the administrator role, stuff like that. And you can customize all this on the back end or the front end, wherever you like. But this is a quick view of what you get out of the box for the user experience. And then in other videos that you should check out, we're going to go into how you can extend this, add new features, use our scaffolder, which is really cool, and do more stuff to get these applications to market. But as you can see, this is a fresh clone, a fresh run, and we already have the baseline and infrastructure for an app that we could go pretty far with. So I really hope that this was helpful. And if you have questions about other content that you would like to have, or if you want to contribute on the site, please do. In the meantime, thank you very much for checking our video out. And if you want to reach out to me directly, I'm ed@sharplogic.com, or of course the GitHub repo at github.com/sharplogic/lightnap is a great way to get involved. So once again, thanks and good luck.